Hello and welcome back to Millennium Immigration Consultancy. In today's video, we will be discussing how to apply for the Australian tourist visa from Kenya. So if you're planning a trip to Australia in the near future and you need to know the step-by-step process of going about that, then this video is for you. I have written down some notes here, so you'll forgive me if I keep checking. It's because I don't want to forget anything. So let us start by step 1, which is to determine the type of visa you need. If you've ever tried to check from the Australian Embassy website, you will note that there are so many visa options for you. So determine the kind of visa you need, which is determined by the purpose of your visit. But for today's video, we're talking about the visit visa. So once you have established the kind of visa you need, now you know the kind of process you're going to take. So what is an Australian visit visa? This is a visit visa that allows you to travel to Australia for tourism purposes, and you're not allowed to work, you're not allowed to study. The only thing you're allowed to do is be a tourist, and it's valid for 3 months. That is the maximum you can be there at a go. However, sometimes you will be given a single entry, sometimes you will be given a multiple entry, which is determined by your travel history. So you'll find that people who have traveled before to UK or Canada or the United States will probably get a multiple entry to Australia. Whereas if you've never traveled out of Kenya and you try applying for the Australian visa for the first time, you'll probably get a single entry. So a single entry means you've been given 1 year, but you can only go one time. For a multiple entry means within that 1 year, you can go to Australia as many times as you please, but it's still tourism. Now, the second step is to gather all the necessary documents. Before you start an application, it's very important to first have all your documents ready so that you don't start an application and then in the middle of the application you realize you've forgotten something and then now you have to go and look for that document. So gather all the documents that are necessary so that you can start the application. And these are some of the documents that are needed for this kind of applications. The very first one and the most important and the most basic and the most obvious is a passport. However, make sure that your passport is valid. Make sure that your passport is not going to be expired in the next 6 months. Make sure you have a couple of blank pages left in your passport. So if you're Kenyan, you know that the government had said that everybody is supposed to renew their passports from the old generation to the new generation. So if you have an old generation, the navy blue passport, you cannot use that to travel. You'd have to get the new East African passport. Okay? The second document is a passport-sized photograph on a white background. That is very specific. So just walk into any cyber cafe or a studio and ask them to take a passport-sized photograph on a white background for visa purposes. This way you'll be able to get the correct dimensions that are needed by the embassy. The third document is a completed application form, which is done online and also submitted online. So this one you get once you've already started doing the application. The fourth document is the proof of funds. Now this is a tricky one because a lot of people ask me, how much money am I supposed to have in my bank account? How much balance am I supposed to have? And it's not so much about the balance you have in your bank account. It's about showing that you can afford that trip. You can pay for the flight tickets. You can pay for the travel insurance. If you're staying in a hotel, you can comfortably pay for the hotel reservation. So if you're employed, your bank statements is supposed to show you receive a certain amount of money every month. These are your debits. This is, it's not just about the balance. It's how much money comes into your account and how much money gets out of your account and how often does that happen. If you're a business person, the same thing, they'll check that how much money comes into your account, how much money is retained in that account, and how much money comes out of the account for utilities and other needs. Okay, so there's no substantial amount of money you're supposed to have, but I always say, if you're a tourist in a new country, assume you're spending 15,000 Kenya shillings per day, then you can be able to calculate. Okay, all right. So the other document is a letter explaining your visit. This is also what I call an applicant letter. Mainly I always assist in writing this letter because this letter says, it first introduces you, it states your purpose for the visit, it says who you're going to be visiting if you have a host, or where you're going to be staying, and what you plan to do during your visit. The other one is also a cover letter. A cover letter it's just a cover letter. It's an introduction to your entire application, which is something that an immigration agent would be able to help you with. The other document is a letter from your employer, a letter of consent. So if you're employed, you ask your employer to write you a letter stating that they are aware and they consent to you traveling to Australia from this date to this date. That letter from the employer also has your job title, your responsibilities in that company, how much money you make. Okay, so it gives a lot of information. It has the company letterhead, it has a stamp and a signature. What if you're not employed? Then you're self-employed. If you're self-employed in Kenya, at least you need, the least document you should have is a business name search registration, and then you should also have a certificate of company registration. So those are the documents you would produce. If you're a student, you go to your school, you ask them to write you a letter, just like the employer would write a letter. So they should write a letter saying that you're a student in that institution and you will be traveling to Australia from this date to that date, and it has the school letterhead and a stamp and a signature. So those are very important because they show the embassy that you have an intention to come back and you're not just trying to run away to a new country. Finally, we have a section of documents called evidence of ties to your home country. Evidence of ties could be economic ties, could also be social ties. When I say economic ties, I mean besides you having that job or that business, perhaps you have a side hustle. That would be great. We have to indicate that. If you own some properties or some real estate, then you provide the evidence, which would be copies of the title deeds. If you have some vehicles, you show your logbooks. Those are economic ties. If we talk about the social ties, it means that you are a social being and you associate with other people. So you could be a member of a church, you can get a letter from your church. If you're a member of an organization or an NGO or Red Cross, or if you're married to your spouse, you produce the marriage certificate. If you're a parent, you produce the birth certificates for your children. If you probably take care of your elderly parent, then you provide that kind of documentation showing that you are a social person and that you have social ties, which is evidence and an intention for you to come back to your home country. For those people who applied for this kind of visa, one of the main reasons why most visas are rejected, and they say, is because there is lack of evidence of your intention to come back to your home country. So if you're planning to do your masters, or if you're enrolled in a school, then you should also provide that kind of evidence. All these things are not indicated in the websites, and that is why a lot of people would miss them. They're supporting documents, but they may be what breaks or makes your case. So they're very, very important. Okay, so now the third step is to submit your application. Once you have gathered all your documents and you've done the paperwork and you've filled in everything you're supposed to fill in, be very careful when you're filling in, because you might not get another chance to make corrections once you've already submitted. So now you submit your application online. From there, you go ahead and book a date of appointment to come and take your biometrics. In Nairobi, it's in Westlands. So you submit your application online, you get a date of appointment, and then you show up. If you get late even with 15 or 30 minutes, you'd have to rebook another date. So make sure that you keep time. Okay, all right. Then once you have gone to the VFS Global or the Visa Center and you've done your biometrics, they've taken your picture, you go home and wait for them to make a decision. Now, during COVID and the period after COVID, the visa applications, the decisions were taking quite a long time. They were actually taking 95 days, which is 3 months. But of late, I have seen that it's now taking a shorter time. So, for example, there are applications we made in January and we got our response the early April. So they basically took 3 months to make that decision, but eventually the visas were granted. So once they make their decision, they will send you an email. Note that for the Australian visa, you don't leave your passport at the visa center or the embassy, you go home with it. The visa is not a sticker on your passport, it's actually a document they send to your email that you're supposed to print, and I'm going to show you an example. So just wait for your decision. If they grant the visa, they will send you an email. If they deny the visa, they will also send you an email explaining the reasons why they have denied your visa. So there's something I wanted to talk about. Say you had applied for your visa and then it got denied for one reason or another. A lot of people feel like they want to apply for another visa almost immediately. One thing you need to know is that if you submit your visa application and it gets rejected, there's a higher chance of getting rejected again, because once you have submitted your application and maybe they said they didn't see enough reason for you to come back to your home country, and you try applying for that visa immediately after, that shows that it might not be so clear to them that your circumstances have changed. And that is why it's very important to use someone who knows how to do the process, or someone who has a bit of experience, because if you're applying for a visa for the first time by yourself, there's a lot of language you may not even understand, you may not be sure what they mean, you may not be sure what documents to present or how to present your case basically. But if you use someone like a visa agent or an immigration consultant, the job of this person is to make sure that you have all the documentation ready and that you leave no chance for this visa officer to doubt your reason to come back. So if you have an application which was denied, I always say take 2 months, let your circumstances change, or let us review your case and let us see what we can add onto that case to show that you have an intention of coming back. So once you get your visa ready, now you start planning your trip. You can go to Australia anytime that you're ready. So in conclusion, it's always important to plan your trip early on in advance. I always advise people to plan their trips 3 months to 6 months in advance, so that you give yourself time and also the embassy time to make a decision. So I hope you found this information helpful. Remember, if you have any questions or need any further assistance with your visa application, you can always reach out to Millennia Immigration Consultancy. My number is on the bio, and I will always be here to assist you. Okay, so I want to show you an example of an Australian visa. This is how it looks like. Okay, so it has the embassy letterhead, and this is how you know it's been granted. It's indicated. Okay, so thank you so much for your patience and for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.